3 of our 4-day webinar series. It's our great pleasure to have you back here with us, and I still see a lot of our friends from Myanmar, so Mingalaba, and also a lot of friends and parents who are based in Singapore and Indonesia and Bangladesh as well, so welcome. Today's topic is finding a voice for nonverbal children, AAC. I think a lot of parents and professionals are concerned about when the child is going to have speech and when is my child going to start talking with me, and whether my child will ever talk, and how do I get to understand what my child is thinking. So before a child develops speech, we might have to explore different means of communication for the child. All right, so today with me, I have my 2 colleagues, Yvonne. Yes, and that's Yvonne, and we have also Jane with us. Yep. And I hope you all will enjoy the presentation today and learn as much as you can, like the last 2 days. Some logistics announcement before we proceed with the presentation. I've got some feedback from parents and colleagues, as well as your participants, that you have friends or colleagues and other parents who might be interested to watch the webinars but is unable to make it at this time that we have scheduled it. So don't worry, we are sending out recordings to those who are still interested, and there will be links to on-demand viewings. So you can just ask those who are interested but have missed out this round to sign up with us using the links which you have used to sign up. All right, and if you have any questions, always feel free to email us. We will have our email address written at the end of the presentation, or you can always go to our Facebook page, Summers Therapy Services, or you can check out our website, summerstherapyservices.com. All right, without further ado, we'll proceed with the presentation, and I will see all of you later. And do remember to send in your questions in the Q&A box. In the last 2 days, we have quite a few interesting questions, and I think asking questions is the best way to process the information you have received and to think about your child and the children that you work with. All right, everyone, enjoy the presentation.
Hello, welcome to day 3 of our webinar series, Talk With Me. I'm Yvonne, a speech therapist from Summers Therapy Services, and you are in the 3rd day of our webinar series, a 4-day webinar series, which is in conjunction with our 5th year anniversary celebrations. And today's topic is finding a voice for nonverbal children. So let's get started. What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about find a voice for nonverbal children. What is AAC? We'll spend a bit more time tackling the common misconceptions or myths about AAC. We'll briefly cover the different AAC systems that are available, and then we'll spend about 15 minutes at the end for questions and answers. All right, so if you have sent in your questions during the registration, thank you so much. But if you have any more questions or any questions that come up during the presentation, please feel free to just send them in the chat or the Q&A box. All right. So finding a voice for nonverbal children. In order to find a voice, we have to first figure out why they are not using the voice. And there may be many reasons why a child is not using their voice to talk and are nonverbal. Some of them include things like structural issues in the speech system, for example, damage to the vocal cord, cleft lip or cleft palates. This will cause a structural obstruction or structural issue in producing speech. They could also have muscular issues, for example, weak muscles that are not strong enough to close the jaw to where it needs to go. They could also have motor speech planning issues, where they may not know how to coordinate their breath for speech or to coordinate the mouth to be placed in the correct position to produce a speech sound. It could also be due to a language delay or language disorder. So if you look at the side here, we have what we call the language development pyramid. And if you've been with us for the past 2 days of our webinar, you'll be very familiar with this pyramid by now. So this bottom foundation here is pre-linguistic skills, which my colleague Jane spoke about in our first day of our webinar. Then yesterday we talked about understanding language and using language. And all these are the foundations to expressive language and speech, which is verbal language, verbal communication for our children. So if there is any delay here in the language part of it, then it will naturally affect the speech output part as well. All right. So this could be one of the reasons why a child is nonverbal. It could be a language issue. It could also be due to other developmental delays and disorders that lead to language delays and disorders. So very commonly we hear ASD, GDD, Down syndrome, any other issues or developmental delays that may cause a delay in the development of language. All right. It could also be hearing loss. So if I'm not able to hear spoken language, I'm not able to use spoken language naturally. All right. And it could also be even like psychosocial issues, selective mutism for one, or severe neglect or lack of language stimulation in my environment. If I don't hear language, nobody is talking to the child, then how will the child develop speech? So all these are arranged, and if you notice, they range from structural, physical issues to planning, cognitive development issues to, again, structural, physical issues, and then you have cognition issue or psychosocial issues as well. So there's such a range, which tells me that when I want to find a voice, there is no one-size-fits-all answer. And we cannot say, oh, just work on the muscle system. It's not going to target my language delay issues. Or I say, just work on the language. It's not going to target my muscular issues. If I say, just work on the language, then if it's a psychosocial issue that requires a psychologist's input as well, then we all need to figure out, why is my child not verbal? And there can be so many ways. But I hope you have noticed by now that I have not listed that it is not because they have nothing to say. There can be so many different ranges of reasons. But most often, children have something to say. They do want to say something, even if they're not verbal. So if you just look at this picture here, you have 3 boys here who are not saying anything. It's a picture. You're not hearing them say anything. But you can get an idea that they do have something they want to tell you. This boy, look at his facial expression. He's like, oh, pick me, please. I have something to say, please. So just the non-verbal part of it is already telling you they have something to say. And this is where I need to make a clear distinction between verbal language and communication. Now, communication is when a message is being sent from one person to the other. So you see this diagram over here. You have this person sending the message to this person, and the person is sending the message back. So it doesn't matter what form I send this message. It can be verbal, it can be non-verbal, but as long as the message is being sent, communication is happening, and that is communication. The idea that a message is being sent. Language is the tool which we use to send the message across. It can be verbal, it can also be non-verbal. So verbal language is not on the same rank as communication. Communication comes first, and then it is split into verbal language, and then there's non-verbal language as well that adds into your communication. So verbal language will be things like sounds that we make using spoken words. Non-verbal language will be things like expressions. So you will realize that we are also using non-verbal language every day in our communication. Gestures, pointing, all these are non-verbal communication. Written words, what you're reading on this screen right now, they are non-verbal language. Other forms of AAC, there are also other systems that are more developed into a language system of its own that is also falling under non-verbal language. But as long as it helps communication, it is also equally important as verbal language. So be clear that verbal language is not the only way of communication. We have our non-verbals with us, and everyone is also using a mixture of non-verbal and verbal. I'm using expressions, gestures, written words as well. Right now I'm even using video to feedback to you. So that's also another form of AAC, right? So what is a voice? We want to find the voice for our children. Now we realize that voice is essentially something that lets our message be heard. Because if you're talking about the physical voice, it's right here in our throats. We know where it is, but when we talk about finding a voice, we're talking about actually getting my message heard. And as we went through the definitions before, getting our message heard falls under communication, not verbal language. So finding a voice is actually finding a way to communicate, all right? And that brings me to AAC. AAC stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. It's a very big term, but essentially it's just an umbrella term to include all the ways that we share our ideas and feelings without talking, which means, if you come back to this diagram, everything here is considered AAC. Everything that we do without talking, and we are sending a message, communication, without talking, non-verbal language, that falls under AAC. So the expressions, the gestures, written words, when I write down or text my friend, I'm using AAC, all right? So let's go into the words of AAC. It stands for augmentative, which means to supplement verbal speech. It stands for alternative. The second A is alternative, to replace verbal speech. Then communication, as we have already said many times, is about sharing a message from one person to another person. So supplementing verbal speech means, for example, I may have an idea that I want orange juice. I may be able to say I want, but I don't have the speech sounds or the system for me to say orange juice. So all I can say is I want. So I may then use AAC to supplement my verbal speech. So verbally I can say I want, but then I will use the AAC to say orange juice. So that now my entire message is communicated across with both my speech and nonverbal, which is AAC. So that is the augmentative, alternative communication, the augmentative part of it. Alternative is when I'm not able to say anything. So for example, today, if I lost my voice, I went to a dentist and my entire mouth is numb. I can't say anything. I don't want to say anything. Then my alternative communication comes in, where if I lost my voice, then it has to replace my speech. So I may be writing things down. I may be texting a lot. I may be gesturing a lot. So then I'm using another form of communication to replace the voice that I don't have. So AAC stands for both when you use it to supplement as well as when you use it to replace verbal speech. And this is where the first common myth comes in, or the common concern I hear among parents is, if you want to introduce AAC, will it discourage my child from using speech? Because you may be saying, hey, remember in your AAC, the second A, it says it's used to replace speech, you know. What if my child chooses to use the second A instead and gets AAC to replace your speech? Now, I want to say here, again, no, this is not what will happen. Do not worry. AAC does not discourage children from using speech. Research has shown over and over again that it will not stop children from talking. In fact, it has positive effects on speech and language development. Now, if you don't believe what I'm saying, I have quoted them exactly here for you to see. So in a study by these researchers in 2006, they have said AAC do not inhibit speech production. Instead, AAC may also support speech production. These researchers have said the use of AAC does not affect motivation to use natural speech and can in fact help improve natural speech when therapy focuses simultaneously, that means at the same time, on natural speech as well as AAC. It does not affect the motivation to use it. So you still would want to use natural speech. Intervention for minimally verbal school-age children. So they do have some verbal output, but perhaps not as much. Children with ASD included the use of speech-generating devices, which is also a form of AAC, increased spontaneous output and use of novel utterances. So the usage of AAC here was documented. They increased the use of the child coming up and using communication on their own and using novel, new sentences and new phrases that are taught. So it's not just repeating, they are really using the language. And this is what AAC is doing. And don't take my word for it, these are the references here. You also have Summaries app, which is developed by Summers Therapy Services, where we give summaries of research and the latest trends in a summarized version for parents to read, so that you can be on top of what is the latest research and what are researchers actually saying. If you don't believe us for it, please inform yourself, stay informed, and be informed of what intervention you are choosing for your child. All right? They should be evidence-based, which is what we strongly believe here. Now, if you say, okay, you tell me the researchers say this, so let me show you a real-life example. So this is Sam. Sam was introduced in AAC when he was around 2 years old. There's a video of him at 2 years old using AAC. And then we will see whether at 5 years old he is using speech or not. All right? Here he's coming
Close.
and saying close.
Open.
Now he's going to open. So at this point here, many parents will say, see, Yvonne, you asked me to use an AAC. This child doesn't use speech at all. He's not even trying to make a sound. AAC is going to stop him from trying to use speech. He's so happy using the AAC instead. So now look at what Sam is doing at age 5.
You opened it.
Well, okay, well, it's in England. London, England. So, London, England is a part of the United Kingdom.
London, England is a part of the United Kingdom. Now, there are many factors and many disclaimers I must make every time I bring in a real-life example with timelines like that. So first, we must be clear that we're not talking about, 3 years, that means after AAC is introduced, after 3 years, they will start using speech. I'm not saying that at all. This is just one example. And I'm trying to show the point of this is that Sam did develop his speech. He did develop verbal language. AAC was introduced, he was using AAC at age of 2 already, and at age 5, he was using speech. It did develop. AAC did not hinder his speech development. It did not stop him from using speech. Now, again, every child has different reasons for why they are nonverbal. There are many different factors, and we don't want to compare the timing, and I cannot guarantee, if you use AAC for a longer time, you will be able to develop speech. But I'm saying for sure, it is not stopping the speech from coming out, and that's what you can see from Sam's story. So we have another story here for you to see, Brady. You will see a different timeline, different sequence of introducing AAC as well.
What's your number?
Before AAC was introduced, and they started to introduce AAC when he turned 4. So within 6 months, he was using about 50 language development.
Here's orange.
Orange.
Should we open? Open orange. Open orange. Open orange. Right orange. Oh.
Using speech as well. So AAC was introduced as well, and speech did come along. And I think after 1 year, he was doing so well that they didn't need the AAC anymore. And this is him today.
You. I'm gonna hold you like I'm saying goodbye. Easy standing. I won't take you, go ahead. Cause we no when
and today he's singing. So again, you will see a different timeline. But the point of both these stories is that these children were introduced AAC and their speech did come along. It was not stopping them from developing speech. Alright, so that is the main point I want you to see. These are real life examples. Both of them are taken from YouTube. Please go ahead and search on YouTube in your free time as well. Search AAC speech and you will see how many parents and kind interventionists have shared all their stories, their life stories, and they shared with you on YouTube how AAC has helped them in their communication journey. And this is just two of them that show that AAC did not stop their children from developing speech. Alright? So again, will it discourage my child from using speech? Another point that we can look at this argument is naturally speech is actually faster and much more efficient than AAC. Whether we like it or not, it is a fact that will stay. AAC does take time, and when speech is a viable option, when your child is able to use speech, it is very likely that they will use speech instead of AAC. Alright, so this is a video of Ava. She is a experienced AAC user, a fluent AAC user. She has her AAC device here, as you can see, and she's able to form sentences with it. But I want you to see what is the first thing that she uses to try to get her message across.
Just tell me one more time, because I'm really confused about what you were saying. I just don't get it.
Gaga, you can see her. No, Gaga.
What?
No.
Look right there. Look what's right there.
So you see, she's trying to use speech, so it could be in this case because mommy is familiar with her and she knows that mommy sometimes perhaps could understand some of the speech approximations that she's making. So she's using speech and trying to get her message across through speech first. Then she tries to get it with the AAC. Which is it, AAC takes time.
Watch. Toxias Hospital.
Oh, so.
Toxias Hospital.
Oh.
So here is, she wants to watch TikTok, her video program that she likes. So she's able to form a whole sentence, and mom did not need to help her throughout the entire process. She knew how to go to the buttons and say what she wanted to say. But remember, what did she choose to use first? She chose to use speech first. She tried to use speech first. And that comes back to our basic premise that speech is easier and naturally faster and more efficient than AAC for children as well. So if speech is a viable option, they will likely use speech. Alright? So think about it. I want you to think about the last time that your computer failed to do what you needed it to do. So maybe you were trying to send a message or trying to record a webinar like today, and the computer failed on you. Can you remember how frustrated that feeling was? And imagine now, for your child, that is every moment of the day. It's not just that one moment with the computer, but every moment they try to say something, communication breaks down. How frustrating is that day? So instead of thinking AAC being discouraging your child from using speech, let's think about how discouraging failed communication attempts can be for the child and what are the consequences of that. Alright? And now let's go to myth number 2. So now you're saying, okay, maybe I don't want to frustrate my child so much, and let's give them an option, but can we leave that to the last thing? Because AAC should be the last thing that we target. Let's try and target speech first, then we talk about AAC. And this is why we say, no, please, let's target and introduce AAC as early as we can. Because first thing, introducing AAC does not mean that we give up on speech. So we will still be working on speech as we introduce AAC anyway. So, but we need to be realistic and know that sometimes verbal language may take a while more. If I'm working on, for example, a child who needs to strengthen their muscles, for speech. It will not happen by tomorrow or next week. Muscles take time. But the communication need is there, and it's there since yesterday already. And that's why we need to respect the child's right to communicate and respect what they want to communicate, and give them an option, non-verbally, to say what they need to say before or while waiting for the language, the verbal part to catch up. It does not mean that we give up on it, but it also does not mean we give up on this while we work on one. At the end of the day, our end goal is to be able to send the message across so that we don't have that frustration, so that we give them a chance to say what they want to say. So it doesn't mean we give up on verbal language. We are simply giving them the option and the opportunity to communicate what they want. All right? It's also important because it's helpful for their language development. At a young age, that's when children are picking up all the different words, they are learning the different concepts in their vocabulary, they have ideas, they have things that they want to share and learn. Now, if there is no tool for them to send the message across or receive the message, how are they going to learn these critical concepts? It's going to be lost on them. So now we have Lily. Now, I love this interaction so much. It's slightly longer, and I will ask you to bear with me as we go through this longer video, because we will be using Lily as an example for our third misconception as well. So when we look at Lily's interaction with her teacher, let's look at what she's able to say with AAC and what she's able to say without the AAC. And have a think about how much of her language is boosted because she had the AAC there. All right?
Okay, I have my words in here. Let me put the words up here so you can reach them. And why don't you pick something out of my bag? Can you pick something out? Or do you want to choose off of here? What do you have to tell me? I want bubbles? Absolutely, let me find my bubbles. Here.
So notice here, she was already able to point to bubbles which was not in the view. It was hidden in the bag, and she was able to communicate that she wanted bubbles and tell me that she has bubbles in the inventory, even though she's not able to produce it. She was able to produce I, but she couldn't say the word bubbles. But she could use the AAC to tell me she wanted the bubbles.
Here they are! Here's my bubbles! Do you want to blow bubbles? Bubbles are for blowing. Do you want to blow? Or do you want me to blow? You want to blow. Ready? Set, blow. Do you need some help? Help? Can I help you?
Teachers, if I could have your attention for expediency, and I know I'm...
Oh, did it get on your eye? Oh, are you all done? Do you want more
That's the third
bubbles?
grade. Teachers,
More?
look out the window.
Okay, let's
We
do
need to pass
more. Do you do more or all done? All done.
So here you see she was pointing to her eye, and her teacher was saying, oh, was that you asking for more bubbles? And through the AAC, she was able to say, oh, actually it's all done. She wanted all done, not more.
Should we do something different? You want cars? Let's get out cars.
Doing something that was out of sight. She did it
The
this way.
cars? Should we drive the cars on the road? Who did it? Can you do more? What do you want to tell me? Hi. Play? Bubbles. You want to play bubbles? Or stack blocks?
Plays double. This is
Maracas. I want maracas. I'm going to find the maracas. Here they are. Do you want some? Say, I want maracas.
Yeah, Mom.
Do you want some? You want to sing with it? Okay, here they are. Here's the maracas and we'll sing, okay? Ready? So what do we want to sing?
Yeah.
Do you want to sing bingo or row your boat? Row? Okay.
Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream.
So here you see she's able to say what she wants to do with the maracas, not just maracas, not just shake, which we normally would associate. If a child is asking for maracas, we would shake it, but she could say, hey, I want to sing, I want to hear a song with my maracas. And then let's look at now when she takes out a book, all right?
Merry, life is but a dream.
Do you want to do more maracas?
The bugs go around the town, all through. What are you gonna find? What's in there?
Oh, what did you find? You found a book.
Not to the end of section.
You found a book.
Yeah.
You need to read?
You found a book.
Should we read the book? Read the book?
The teacher is reading the book.
Read the
I'm
book.
using it now, but the teacher is reading the
Happy
book.
and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know
You go
it,
through
and
the
your
book,
face will
and then
surely
you go on
show
to
it.
find
If you're
another
happy and you know it, clap your hands. That's a singing book. It's a singing book.
Here, try that again.
That was silly.
You found another book.
That was silly, Marla.
What did you find? You found
A book. You did find a book.
What do we do with a book? Do we drive or read? We read a book. I will read it. Five silly.
Alright? So think about it. What was in Lily's vocabulary without AAC? She could point to her eye, she could not. You could see somehow yes, no may have been there. She could somewhat vocalize all done, although that was said with the help of the AAC as well. She could breathe in to show that she wanted to blow, but that was about it without the AAC. Now with the AAC, however, you can see here, she could say I. It helped her to vocalize the I. She could talk about bubbles, she could talk about car, she could say she wanted the maracas. All this was without the actual objects being there. Now without the AAC, she wouldn't have been able to point to them, neither was her system perhaps ready enough to say these words. She was also able to say book the second time after the teacher thought. Used it the first time the teacher pointed to the AAC and said, hey, book. And the second time it was her turn and she said, oh, book. And all these concepts, play, she could point to play, she wanted to play, she wanted to sing with the maracas. And when the teacher asked her the question, you know, what do you do with the book? Do you drive or do you read? And she could say, hey, you read with the book. So all these concepts and ideas, I wouldn't have known it was in her vocabulary if not for the AAC. And without an AAC system, we wouldn't be even bringing up these concepts to them because there is no reference for it to teach. So it's very important to help in the building of the vocabulary that there is something there that we can say, hey, look, this is what it means, this is what it means. And it adds on to their language development. And again, we are very research-based here. So research also shows AAC, early implementation of AAC can aid in the development of natural speech and language. It can increase the vocabulary of children ages 3 years and younger. Again, AAC is for young child during the period when he or she is just developing communication and language skills to prevent failure in communication and language development. So again, all these researchers, renowned researchers, are saying the same thing over and over again. We do want to include AAC early on to help that language develop. Remember our language development pyramid. Speech is right at the top. At the bottom is all our language foundations. We want to build that foundation for our child. So AAC should not be the last thing that we try. We should be implementing it now. And that brings us to our third myth, which is children who can express their basic needs do not require AAC. So you're like, it's okay, I know what my child needs, I know what they want to eat, I know what when they want to change, when they're sleepy, what's their favorite show. But really, let's look at Will, okay? So Will is a really cute 2.5-year-old boy. And his mom is trying to figure out what he wants.
Say what you just said again. What did you say? Don't want?
No.
Can you say it again?
No.
Show me what you did with your hand. What does that mean? Say it.
But.
But?
No. Don't want.
Don't want?
No. An apple, Mommy.
Oh, the iPad? You tell me with the iPad? Here.
So up to this point, we know that he can say no quite well. Somewhat of a don't want. He can even say, I want iPad, Mommy. So that tells me more or less basic communication is there. He can tell me the basic things, the common things that Mommy knows he would want. But in this situation, do you know what he wants? No, we can't figure it out because it's beyond his basic communication needs. It's beyond what he's usually able to say. So with the AAC, let's see what he wants now.
What about the bus? There's a bus over here. School bus?
School bus.
What were you saying about the bus?
No, I see too black.
You want to see a school bus? Oh wait, wheels on the bus?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
The song?
Yeah.
Or were you saying go round?
No.
He's like, yay, Mommy got
what you
it.
just said
He
again.
knows what I want. So at that point, that's when communication is successful and the child is like, yes. Compared to the facial expression here, where he's like, oh, no, let's try and figure this out. So it's a lot more than basic communication. Our children have so much more to tell us. Same thing as Lily just now. Again, what was she able to say? Without an AAC, she could have said, oh, the bubble got in my eye. And at that point, she didn't have the AAC to say, oh, done, I don't want. Her teacher may have interpreted this as she wanted more bubbles and she would have just gotten more bubbles. Without the AAC, she wouldn't be able to tell the teacher she wants to change the game. She wants the cars now. And after the cars, she wants to change it to maracas now. She wants the teacher to sing with the maracas. How would she be able to tell the teacher that if not for the AAC? And those are not basic things that she could say. So AAC is not just for those children who can express their basic needs, or who cannot express their basic needs. Even if your child can express their basic needs and you can interpret roughly, they will still need AAC to increase their range of communication. And given the AAC, you will see that they can tell you so much more, just like Lily and Will. And it can help prevent the frustration when they want to tell you something and they're only stuck with that 4 options. Can you imagine if I give you a computer today and you're only allowed to open 1 Word document and 1 PowerPoint document and nothing else? You'll be so frustrated because you want to do so many other things with your computer. Similarly, a child who has so many things they want to tell you, why are we limiting it to only the basic things that we can interpret? So AAC can help to increase the communication range and prevent frustration. It also helps to further language development. So think about it, all right? We also have different types of AAC. So we have talked about all the different misconceptions about AAC, the biggest one being that it will replace speech or stop speech from coming up. We have also looked at how we should not wait until everything else is tried. And then we talk about bringing in an AAC system. And then we've also talked about how actually not only does your child need to talk about basic needs, they need an AAC to help them beyond basic needs as well. So there are different types of AAC that we can introduce to a child. They are mostly divided under unaided and aided. So unaided is AAC systems that do not require tools. So you just use your physical body, for example, facial expressions or gesture points. Sign language is a more complex system where you can talk about everything and use it in an established system without using any external tools. You're using your hands. Well, your entire body actually. But aided systems is where you bring in tools. So that's where the pictures and things external to your body are brought in to help with your system. So under aided AAC, we have 3 kinds of AAC. We have low-tech, mid-tech, and high-tech. So low-tech does not mean it's of a lower quality or a lower level. Low-tech simply means it's low technology. So it's referring to the AACs that do not require battery. So for example, the communication boards that you saw some similar to what Lily was using. You can see picture exchange communication systems. You can see alphabet boards or just pen and paper. All these are what we call low-tech AACs because it does not require battery and we still use them to communicate. Then we have mid-tech AAC where you do need a battery because this is where you press the button and you can hear a sound being generated. And what causes them mid-tech is because they don't change the display. So this is a cookie button. After I press the cookie button, it will still be a cookie button. I want to eat pizza. I can press these buttons and it doesn't really change the display as much. Compared to high-tech AAC, where it's battery operated again, and when I press a folder, maybe I press this folder things, it will bring up a folder and a new page of the different things that I can ask for. If I press go, it will bring up different places that I can ask for. If I type different things, it will look different and it will say whatever is on my text here. So this is high-tech AAC where it is more suited for a dynamic interaction where I can change what I'm seeing quite often and quite quickly. So it's usually a continuum. You have a low-tech, mid-tech, and high-tech continuum here. There is no one-size-fits-all, and there is no one that is better than the other in all situations. It will depend on what is suitable for your child. So as to which system or which AAC system you should use, it is best to find your nearest SLP and get them to sit down and have that discussion for your family and your needs for your child. Because depending on your child's needs, every system could be different and we need to customize AAC systems according to your child's needs. All right? So have the chat with your SLP. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to have the discussion with you. All right, and we have reached the end of our webinar today. Well, the end of our presentation at least. So I hope that you can understand from our main takeaway points is that communication is beyond verbal language. So when we talk about finding a voice for our non-verbal children, we are talking about finding a way to communicate. And when we talk about finding ways to communicate, verbal is not the only option there is. And the number one myth that AAC will not inhibit their speech, all right? So remember, AAC will not inhibit or discourage speech output, but it is a viable means and a good way for our non-verbal children to find their voice, to use their voice. And language development is important for both verbal and non-verbal children, and that is where your AAC can come in and support that development, which then in turn will support them using their voice more. Because if they don't have language to talk about, there's nothing they want that they can talk to you about. So take advantage of AAC and maximize the communication of your non-verbal child. Maximize the voice so that they can tell you what they want to say. Okay, so thank you for staying all the way to the end of this presentation. If you have any further questions or more detailed Q&A you would like us to get back to you, please feel free to write in to us. And now we'll get on to our Q&A section.
Hi everyone, thank you Yvonne for the sharing and thank you everyone for joining us. I hope that you have gained some knowledge about AAC and also get the elephant out of the room for some misconceptions about AAC. So now I will invite Yvonne and also Hui Ting to answer some questions. Thank you for sending in your questions, very beautiful questions there that I can see. So first question here. So one of the participants have asked that she said, my nephew used AAC, but up to now he is non-verbal. My guess is that he may have muscular issues and autism. So for muscular issues, is there a solution or where can we get help?
Answer this. So you mentioned that you're suspecting that there may be some muscular issues that is coming in for the speech segment. So that is a perfect question and perfect timing, because we will be talking about that in our webinar tomorrow, where we go through the speech sound disorders and potential issues with the motor speech system. Definitely there is something we can do for that. So it will require a longer explanation, so do join us tomorrow. Jane will be going through a more elaborate, detailed explanation on what we can do about that. But definitely, yes, for muscular issues for speech, we can address that. Yeah.
Thank you, Yvonne. Yes, we'll be going through that topic next tomorrow. So do join us, and we will be talking about more some underlying reasons of why some children are nonverbal and what can we do about it. So do join us tomorrow. Another question, any cases of tongue tie at Summers Therapy, and what's the outcome after referral for treatment?
Okay, I will take on this question. I think this question came after our Facebook post yesterday about latest research for tongue ties. It is a topic that is up and coming, especially for the last 2 years. So research has shown that tongue ties do affect speech, feeding, breathing, regulation, and general development of a child. Okay, so in Summers Therapy, we do see quite a few children with tongue ties, but of course, not all tongue ties need to be released. So a lot of tongue ties are functional. Like for myself, I've got a tongue tie as well, but I think I speak okay and you all can understand me. So I would assume that's a functional tongue tie. But for some children, we do refer them to get their tongue ties released. Okay, these are the children that have gone through what we call a pre-op therapy. So it's pre-operation therapy. That is something that you do before we suggest for them to do a physical release of the tongue tie. We want to see whether regular speech therapy will actually help them with their feeding skills or speech. If after maybe 3 to 6 months of therapy and we still think that the tongue tie is the reason for their speech and feeding development, we will refer them for the op. And after the op, so far the outcomes has been really good. The recovery stage is actually very quick. It's just the only concerns most parents have is that the kid have to go through GA. They cannot just have the anesthesia at the localized area of the mouth, which usually people will do. Yeah, but usually they recover. They can eat immediately. There's limited bleeding, and they can start therapy within 10 days. Yeah, so the outcomes have been good. Yeah, so now let's go back to the topic of AAC.
Thank you, Hui Ting, for the answer and the description of different processes and some of the concerns that parents might have about the surgery and all. So thank you so much for also sharing with us the new research that's going on. That's very important to update ourselves on all the current research. Yeah. So let's go back to the questions. Another question is AAC a good idea for a 5-year-old kid who is currently at 1 word in terms of speech? So this participant is asking, which app would you recommend? Because there's so many apps out there.
So maybe I'll answer this one. So well, I would need a bit more information naturally. What age is your child? What language stage is she? Because I'm hearing speech is 1 word, but in terms of understanding language, what is the foundation that your child currently has? All those things will be taken into consideration. So when you bring a child for an assessment with a speech therapist to find a good AAC system, we have to take into consideration things like what number of pictures your child can see or can manage at a go, what are the communication needs that your child have, what do they want to say already, that we need to find a way for them to be able to express it with this AAC, what is most functional for the family to understand. So there will be a lot of considerations we take into it. That's why I said at the end of the presentation, we can't really give you a one size fits all answer, because there is no one size. We do tailor AAC systems for the particular child because it is customized for them. So for your this child who is 5 year old with 1 word for speech, I will suggest do get in touch with us, and then we can do an assessment so that we can figure out all the other areas to look into as well. As in terms of the apps that are available, so there are a few apps that we can try that are free as well. So look for those that have maybe 1 to 2 icons to begin with. If your child is new to using an app to communicate with you, don't start with those that have many pictures and they are not familiar and they don't know what to do with that. Then the adult as well is not familiar and the child is not familiar. There's no one to guide the child to use it. And often parents will come to me and say, you see, oh, we tried it, but it doesn't work. But it could be because when we started out, it was too high a level to begin with, and there was no scaffolding to slowly build up the competency for the AAC. So try, if you want to try out certain apps that are available now, look for those that have maybe less. So some names I can suggest would be things like My First AAC, or there's also a one called Sounding Board. So I look for things that we can customize, that we are not fixed to only their pictures, those that we can take our own pictures so that it's more relatable if my child cannot understand abstract cartoon symbols yet. So those are also things that we will need to take into consideration when we try to choose an AAC suitable for the child. So try to look for those apps that can customize. So Sounding Board, you can take a picture and you can use the picture to customize whether you want 2 pictures at a go, or 4 pictures at a time, or 6 pictures at a time as well. So can give those a try before you get an appointment with a therapist to really find a good customized system for this child. Okay, I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Yvonne. And for the participant, I will just put in the app that Yvonne has mentioned to you as well. It's on the Q&A box now. Okay, so yes, we will be catering the AAC according to where the child is at, and there's so many elements to think about. So it's really specific to the child, like how we do any other therapy approaches. It will be specific for the child. Okay, so the next question, may I ask, can AAC be used for children with Down syndrome?
Yes, I would say yes. Of course, again, when we look at suitability, we will choose the AAC according to their needs. But yes, everyone can use AAC. In fact, we are all using AAC. When we text message, it's also a form of AAC. So definitely everyone can use AAC. It's a form of communication.
Yes, everyone can use AAC. And next one, may I check if children will rely on technology used in AAC to communicate and may not be able to communicate effectively without AAC? Will it be something that will be gradually stopped over time as children mature?
Okay, so I'm hearing the question is, will my child not be able to build competency in communication without the technology of AAC, is that right? So again, we go back to, if you can recall in our presentation, we have the verbal communication and non-verbal communication. So when I look at a child who is using AAC system and I want to think of, is this child ready to be faded off the system and move on to the verbal, I look at whether what the child can express at the verbal is at the same level as what the child can express with the non-verbal. So if my AAC is expressing things that is the same level of what I can express verbally, then it's natural that I will take away the AAC and say, okay, we can move back to relying only on the verbal. But again, we always use it and it's always there to supplement if we ever need it. But at the end of the day, the principle is I want to get my best mode of communication out, my highest level or highest level of what I want to communicate across to you. So whether it's verbal is giving me the highest or easiest way to communicate what I want, or non-verbal is giving me the easiest and the best way to get my message across, the one that is at the higher level will be the main one that I work on for now. But then when I want to look at fading off the AAC, it's when the verbal is able to reach the same level of what I want to communicate. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you for answering that question, Yvonne. And last one, what is the price range of the mid-tech AAC? And on average, what is the range of time that the child is able to adapt to the use?
Okay, so price range for the mid-tech AAC, I think we have shown at the end there is a continuum. Devices change every other year. We have different new fancy devices that come out. We have devices that are made in different countries and different places as well. So depending on what device you're using, where it's manufactured and who is selling it, the price will really change. We are looking at hundreds to sometimes thousands even, but it really depends on what device we are using as well. So I unfortunately cannot give you a specific number. It will also be dependent on what device your child needs, whether it's really a mid-tech device that your child needs. So if it's a high-tech device, iPad, then it's the cost of the iPad. If it's a lower tech that it may be suitable, sometimes it can be as much as the cost of printing out that page and laminating it. So again, the price will really depend on what is the most suitable one for your child at that stage. Okay?
Yeah, it really depends on the device. And I think the participant also asked, what is the range of time that the child is able to adapt to the use of the.
So when we introduce AAC, it's not about introducing a complete system and say, okay, now I'll plunk you into this system and then suddenly you will be able to use this system after you learn it. It actually comes in at the level of the child's communication level. So of course there will be a beginning part where we need to introduce them to this system, what is in the system. If it's a picture card, for example, the child must be able to understand, okay, this picture card now represents this real object. If it's a device that we're using, then the child will need to know, okay, if I press this, is equivalent to asking that. But then we won't give, for example, a child who is only asking for single items, AAC system that has 100 vocabulary words in there that the child needs to learn at that stage. I will look at this child. If he has 20 words in their vocabulary system, I will give a AAC that has 20 to 50 words, and then we match it to the child's level, and then we work from there and build up the child's language together with the device. So the device actually adapts and is customized to what the child needs and is at that level. So I hope that kind of gives you a rough idea that it's not so much of I have this system, okay, and now I need to train you to use this system, but your child is here and has communication needs, and let's customize a device to meet those needs and bring it up to the next level.
Okay, I would also like to add on to the question about the price range. I think from my experience, that's a very genuine concern because devices are not the cheapest on earth, and some app could be up to like $300-400. The good news is in Singapore, we have the assistive technology support, and we have the fund for you to get devices. So I know SPD, they have assistive technology department to help families who need their help, and they will do an assessment and then they will prescribe a device and you can apply for the funds. For those families that do not qualify for funds, or teachers who are trying to try AAC with your students and you might want to look at apps which are free for downloads, which Yvonne has shared earlier, or you can also think about printing out pages that's available online. You can Google sometimes like Board Maker AAC, and then they have pages of core words for you to use. You just print it out, laminate, trial it with your child, and then decide whether that would be something that you want to invest money in. Yep, so there's many different options in terms of prices. All right.
Thanks for sharing about the SPD assistive technology place that they can loan the different technology. I think we'll check out the link and we'll put them in the chat box later for all of you to have a look at it. I think we're running a bit out of time now. So for other questions, we'll reply you. Don't worry, we'll reply you. And if you have any other questions, do feel free to contact us at summers.therapyservices.com and follow our Facebook page or our web page. I'll be putting the info in the chat box there for everyone to see. All right, and now I will pass back to Hui Ting to share a little bit more about some information and make a special announcement.
Yes, that's right. Before we go, like the last 2 days, I've been sharing with you about the Summaries app, which is available free for download for this week, and it's got all the 50 articles available. There is an orange tab that you can just tap and you can release all the articles for you to read. Yeah, I think Jane has got a slide to show you the icon of the summaries. I think many of you didn't get the name for the last 2 days. Yep, so we'll have her to share that. Yes, yeah, so this is Summaries app is only available on the iPad and iPhone currently. We are working on having it on Android. Yeah, I mean, our company is not very high-tech company, so all this technology stuff is taking a while. Yep, so in the meanwhile, do enjoy the app. And I think that's all for now. I hope to see all of you tomorrow at day 4. All right, day 4, we'll be talking about speech sounds disorder and what different kinds of disorder you might have and some of the strategies. Yep, and come ready tomorrow. Stay safe.